When I talk with students nowadays, the model that most of them think about in terms of I'm going to get my degree and I'm going to go off into the world of work is that they see themselves as getting a full-time job as a staffer with a news organization, with a public relations agency, with an ad agency, with a nonprofit group or a corporation in their PR or communications department, and they see that as a career that they can move right into where the structure is there. And that has been commonly the way in which the world of work has been organized for people in creative groups. Yes, even if you're a videographer, you may work for a specific group that does nothing but videography, and they have the boss that goes ahead and makes sure that you have all of those assignments, and they give you the benefit package, and you have the regular paycheck. The work is done primarily by staffers in major corporations, and they have the full-time jobs. Now, the smaller the organization, however, the more and more that they may hire outsiders to do pieces of these. Obviously, a small organization isn't necessarily going to have somebody on board who can do flash animation all the time. They hire a freelancer to do that. And if you work for a smaller organization, instead of being able to specialize where maybe you are just the word person, well, maybe they decide that you're the word person and you're also the person who's going to take the photographs to go along with that. I know when I went to work for a magazine, I was quite surprised a few days into the job when they said something about, and here's the camera we would want you to use. And I said, oh, well, I had my own camera and darkroom, and they were dazzled. Oh, that's great, because the more you can do, the more valuable that you are. One of the things I hope you'll take advantage of during your opportunity here at Michigan State is to expose yourself to all sorts of different kinds of skills, because you never know when adding one to the package may make the difference between getting that nice, high-paying, full-time staffer's job someplace and being overlooked in terms of favoring somebody who has those additional skills. The larger the agency, the more you do get to specialize over time. Maybe as you move up the ladder or you move from a small agency to a larger one, maybe you are just the creative person that sits in the room and spins out those wonderful new ideas for the slogan. And you don't have to go out and write the catalog copy that's just sort of taking all the serial numbers and making sure they're straight and putting them into the catalog anymore. That's one of the things that happens as you move up the ladder. At the other end of the spectrum is the freelancer, and that's the person who may well be a one-man band. Somebody says, we want to do a special package on the coal ash problems in the river in our local town. And whether you're doing that package for a newspaper or whether you're doing it for the Sierra Club, it may be that you have to be the person who has the skills to go out and do the research and the interviewing and do the writing about the subject and be your own project manager and set up your own timeline and make sure you're doing it within the budget. Shoot the video, get the audio, figure out how you're going to lay it out, maybe set up a mini website on WordPress on a subsite so that you can put it into a blog. Figure out how you could add a comment section at the bottom. You have to be your own tech person at the same time. One of the things I should also tell you about is that freelancers, I think it's an increasingly good way for students in particular while they're in school to build up a portfolio that they can show to potential employers when they graduate. You really need to think about putting your best work into that portfolio that you can show to others in the hope of getting one of those nice, well-paid, full-time staff positions with all the benefits. When you're doing freelancing as a living, however, and not as I'm a student and I'm just doing it to try to build up my clips, one of the challenges to remember is that it can sound pretty good at first to say, oh, I can make $75 an hour freelancing. That's a pretty good rate of pay, so maybe I don't need that full-time job. Keep in mind that freelancers also have to do all their own personal marketing of themselves. They have to be spending time today to land the next job because the next job isn't automatically there. When you work for the large corporation, they pay you week after week whether there's work there for you or not. And they're the ones who are in charge of getting you that next assignment. When it's your responsibility to find that next assignment, you have to put aside some time so that you can do the marketing of yourself. The other thing that you need to think about, they call it the 40% rule. 40% of your time is going to be spent on non-task oriented for the job type activities. Maybe you get sick, you need to factor that in. Maybe you want a vacation, you need to factor that in. There's the time for the self-promotion. There's the time for the record keeping and the administrative tasks. You don't want to get into trouble with the IRS. But now you have to be the accountant. You don't have the corporation that's keeping track of all those expenses when you go out for the photo shoot. You're the one that has to organize all those receipts, make sure you put them in the right place, and make sure when you get them ready for the tax accountant that you know exactly where they go. So that takes a lot of time. So that $75 an hour that sounds so great, knock 40% off right there. The other thing to remember is that because you'll be buying your own benefit package instead of having it provided for you, most fringe benefit packages nowadays are worth about 35 to 40% of your salary on top. So keep that in mind, that there are times where you find that it's wonderful to work for yourself, and I highly recommend it. And I think for many of you, what you'll find is that the old model of going out and working for one corporation for the rest of your life is not going to be feasible. You're going to have to go from job to job, even sometimes from career to career. When you need to have a cash flow in between, being able to freelance is a wonderful way to stay afloat when you're looking for that next opportunity. And it's also a way for you to find out where is the field nowadays. What are they looking for? What are the skills I need to build before I can get that next job? So think about freelancing as an opportunity, but don't over-assume that it is going to be a lucrative way of life. It's challenging, and you have to be a pretty good business person and money manager on top to make it. One other bit of advice in terms of freelancing, and I always like to give this to people, typically what they say is there's also the 20% rule. We just talked about the 40% rule, where 40% of your time is not spent on the creative tasks you think you're being paid for. The 20% rule says that typically 20% of your clients will generate about 80% of your income. And that's true. Very few clients are the ones, they're the high-ticket ones. Sometimes you're doing a project for somebody, and because it's a friend of a friend, you do it at a discounted rate. The people that really make your money are the top 20% of your clients, and they often generate a significant part of your overall income. The other thing to keep in mind, the other part of the 20% rule, is that about 20% of your clients tend to be the biggest sources of grief. They are the ones who cause about 80% of the grief in your life. They're the ones who miss deadlines, or they say, oh, free Thursday because I'm going to need you to do a special photo shoot, and then you don't hear from them, and all of a sudden you've canceled other things and you're left with that dead time. Those are the kind of clients that can drive you nuts. Now, the real bottom line on the 20% rule is if the 20% of the clients who are giving you the most grief are not part of the 20% that are giving you the most income, fire them. I think everybody who's worked as a freelancer realizes that there are ultimately times where you have to decide for your own survival that you may have to limit your clientele and take care of yourself first. It's a tough world out there, and you have to learn as a creative person how to work with people that help you get and do the kind of work you want to do and pay you well for it. One of the reasons that I am emphasizing freelance work also is that the world of work is changing, and more corporations are looking to hire people for limited amounts of time to do specific tasks. There's so many reasons why it's to their advantage nowadays. Part of it is that the investment they make in a full-time employee is so significant. They have to often pay those benefit packages and retirement benefits and unemployment insurance, and there are all sorts of the legal requirements that go along with a full-time employee. Another concern on the part of a lot of employers nowadays is, wow, a few years ago I didn't think I needed anybody that knew how to do WordPress. Now all of a sudden I do. Or I didn't think I needed anybody who knew how to also shoot video. I mean, I thought I only needed writers. Now I need somebody who can shoot and edit video. As the skill sets change so rapidly, a lot of employers are deciding that it is better not to make a long-term commitment to an employee, but to hire people that are called at-will employees, people that they can bring in for a specific task, or they give you a 6-month or a 1-year contract, and they don't have any continuing obligation to you. That's why part of the challenge for you is making sure that you stay current with all these creative skills. They do change so quickly, and you are going to need to know where you fit in that organization. Just because you have a job as a writer today doesn't mean that 6 months from now they decide that they also want you to be able to do that nice audio story for the podcast or the video story for the website. So make sure that you're constantly refreshing your creative skills. It's going to be very important over time. And build that portfolio now so that you can take the work you're producing here at Michigan State and showcase it to others to land both the freelance position and the full-time position. You know my advice. Get your own name as a domain name right now and start putting up some material that shows you in your best light and shows all the different things that you can do. You're going to gain a lot of skills here at Michigan State. Make sure you showcase them in work you can show others.